Hi, I am Kevin Andrew, the co-director of Alumni and Student Connections at PLU. Today, I am so happy to be joined by PLU alum Nellie Moran. Welcome, Nellie.
Thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Nellie,
Um,
just to
Go
start
ahead.
our conversation, please tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Well, as Kevin said, I'm a PLU alum, proud to have graduated in 2015, and I double majored in economics and French with a minor in political science. And now in my day job, I live in Denver, Colorado, and serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Colorado State Senate Majority Office.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nellie, what advice do you have on how to have difficult conversations at work? And especially with everything going on lately in the world, this is even more, a little more amplified.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, Kevin. In my work, especially given that I work in politics at the Capitol, I have a lot of really difficult conversations at work, whether that's just with my colleagues, with legislators, with stakeholders, with constituents, and often not only are they difficult, but they typically are fairly emotionally charged because people are talking about issues that are really, really important to them, and they feel a deep sense of. And so when I was thinking about this question, I was trying to reflect on how I approach having these difficult conversations. And I think one of the things that's really important is to plan the conversation before you have it. Really think about what you want to say, what your perspective is, sort of what you're hoping to convey in the conversation. Think through sort of key points you want to make, maybe examples of why you feel the way that you do, that type of thing. I was thinking about how, if as a student, when you're working on any sort of project or task that you perceive to be difficult, you generally come up with some sort of an outline of how you're going to tackle that project. And as silly as it might sound, difficult conversations with colleagues or managers or friends can be exactly the same way. And so really taking time to think through what you want to say and sort of map out that conversation can be really helpful, especially because sometimes in the heat of the moment, you can feel flustered. And so allowing yourself to kind of be grounded in knowing what you want to say and what you want to convey, I think can make for a more productive conversation in the long run. And I think, in terms of actually engaging within the conversation, the most important thing is to listen. And when I say it's important to listen, I really mean it's important to listen, not just shut your mouth and think about what you're going to say next. Actually listen to what the person you're engaging with has to say. Again, I guess the most important thing for anyone is to feel heard and to feel like they are able to share their perspective, and the person on the other side is listening and is hearing them and is understanding what they're saying. And so listening with empathy and intention is really important, because I think it's a crucial part of that conversation, right? To hear what the other person has to say, because that will inevitably shape your perspective, and it will help you better understand where they're coming from, and will help you evaluate, okay, this is why it's important to them, and here's why it's important to me, and here's how this interacts. And you don't know what they're going to say, but likely what they say will probably change your perspective a little bit. And so sort of allowing it to be a genuine conversation where you are saying something and they're responding and vice versa allows both of you to feel more fulfilled in the conversation, because the other person it's a participatory process, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
And then I think the last thing is thinking about, and this sort of ties into what I was saying at the beginning, but really thinking about what you want as like a next step or as a resolution. So thinking about, okay, you know, if we're seeking conflict resolution, or we're seeking, you know, some sort of path forward, what do you want that path forward to look like? And, you know, obviously you as an individual can only control what you can control, and that is what you are willing to accept responsibility for, what you are willing to commit to in terms of changing your behavior or changing your perspective, or what have you. And so I think it's important to think through that a little bit, and try to find some sort of resolution or some sort of kind of concrete path forward in order for you and the other person to feel like there is some sort of resolution, or there was a purpose to having this conversation, and there's a sort of mutual respect and mutual commitment to moving forward.
Great advice. What do I think about, you know, when I'm thinking about this resolution and the path forward, how does the emotional piece come into it? Because, yeah, I'm hearing things from somebody. So what would you recommend just about how I think about that in the way I'm having this difficult conversation? Because definitely it could be super emotional for me.
Yeah. I think that, again, it ties back to, we can only control what we can control, right? And I think especially in a lot of the conversations I have, emotions can be very high. And, you know, I think something that I really try to hold true to, and remind myself, is that everybody, I guess not everybody, but I try to assume best intentions. And so when someone is engaging in a conversation with me, I might be really emotional. They're probably really emotional too. And they have this deep sense of connection to whatever issue we're discussing, in the same way that I have this really emotional connection to what we're discussing. And so trying to remember that we're all human, and we all have really strong emotions and really strong convictions and values that we hold dear, and remembering that it's the same for the other person on the other side, and like I said, sort of trying to assume best intentions, and you know, just remembering that you're probably not going to change their perspective, just like they might not change your perspective, but it ties back to this idea of empathy and really listening, and trying to create a safe space where you feel like you can share your vulnerability in a way that they should feel comfortable sharing their vulnerability. And I think there's something really humanizing about that interaction if you're able to create that space.
Thank you. Nellie, if I'm working in an entry-level position, maybe right after college, or I'm a student currently working in an internship, what advice do you have on how to learn in those spaces and not feel that I have to know it all?
Totally. It's such an interesting question. I feel like it's sort of the age-old question, as someone, you know, who's going into an entry-level job or an internship, and you want to impress everyone around you, and you want to seem like you have it together, even though you don't really know what's going on. So a couple of things, I think. The first is this, you know, this is sort of a common refrain, but you should never, ever, 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 ever be afraid to ask questions. Any coworker, any manager, I can tell you, will much prefer you ask a question than assume wrong. But I know that can be sort of easier said than done. Just ask questions. It's totally fine, because sometimes you don't know if it's a dumb question or not, even though there are no dumb questions. So I think my best advice in that realm is to Google, like if you have a question and you're not sure if it's dumb, and you're sort of afraid it might be a stupid question, Google it or do some research, poke around. If you're wondering about something within a database, poke around in the database and see if you can find it. You can find the answer. Don't spend, half a day, but spend, 10, 15 minutes seeing if you can find the answer on your own. And then if you can't, then you can go to your coworker, your co-intern, your supervisor, and you can say genuinely, hey, I tried doing a little bit of research around this and I wasn't able to find the answer. Can you help me? I'm trying to find this, or I don't quite understand how this equation works. And I think not only does that show that you took initiative to try to find the answer on your own, but I think it will help you feel more secure in asking those questions because you did try to find the answer and you weren't able to find it. So if it's not an easily retrievable answer, then it's not a dumb question. You should just ask and kind of, explain why you're asking and, how it fits into the task that you're working on. And any of your coworkers or supervisors are going to be more than happy to answer that question for you. And then, and just in terms of feeling like you're creating a space where you're learning, and trying to get as much exposure as possible, I think my best advice is to just take every opportunity, no matter how big or how small. I think what I've always seen in success in entry-level positions and interns that I've supervised is that sort of attitude of, I'm here to learn, I want to do anything and everything, and taking on those projects, again, whether they're small or large, will inevitably increase your exposure. And as people see you as someone who's willing to take on projects and learn, and even if they're outside of your wheelhouse or outside of your job description, they will see you as a resource and they will come back to you when they need help in the future. And that will, again, sort of build on your opportunities to be exposed and to learn as much as you can. And, in doing so, I think it's, sort of in conjunction with taking on as many opportunities and saying yes as much as you can. I think it's really important to make an effort to get to know your colleagues or your manager or your co-interns, what have you, as real people, and spend some time developing those relationships, because having those allies in the office will not only grant you more opportunities because you have these relationships, but it will also make you feel more comfortable in your space and make you feel more comfortable in asking questions because you've developed a relationship that's based on trust. And so when you're with a friend, you're never questioning whether you're asking a dumb question, you just ask a question, right? So if you're able to develop those relationships at work, I think it can be really helpful in making you feel safe and welcome to ask the questions that you need. And those mentors, those friends will help you and mentor you and give you the support that you need to be successful.
You're absolutely right. Great insight. And for me in my career, it's been, some of my questions have been so appreciated by my coworkers and supervisors because it turned into other conversations that maybe hadn't even been thought about before.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times staff have come to me and said, hey, I'm wondering, what's the process here, or why do we do that? And I'm like, that is a really good question. I don't know why let's talk about it. Let's talk about the process here and see if we can make it more efficient or if it needs to change, because it's just sort of what we've always done. So I welcome the conversation, and good managers will. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, Nellie, thank you again for this conversation, and all the best to you in Colorado and to your family, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much.